Hi, so today we're going to talk about the humble snaffle. Now, every horse rider is familiar with the snaffle, every horse is familiar with the snaffle. It really denotes a single ring bit, to put it very simply. Since man decided to exploit the diastema in the horse's mouth here, this gap here, bits haven't really changed an awful lot in their fundamental design. And we settled on the single ring bit, the snaffle, as the elixir, the one to be aspired to. You'll see in many adverts for horses for sale, snaffle-mouthed. Now the snaffle, there's no getting away from this. It's fundamentally a fairly simple bit, but its selling point originally was its nutcracker action. Now I want you to consider that for a moment, of why would anyone want a nutcracker in their mouth? Now, there's a variety of them, hundreds probably. Single jointed, double jointed, straight bar, mullen mouth, etc., etc. Some of them even have your double rings here, where these would attach to the cheek piece, these will attach to the reins, and so when I pull the reins, this crushes the horse's face onto the bit. So you can see there's variations. We have our former snaffle, often very, very misunderstood. These are actually here to aid in turning the horse, but more often than not they don't have the keepers attached to the cheek pieces, and so they're then fundamentally just a snaffle and they're not doing anything to help with steering at all. We have a mouthing bit, so this is where we are going to train horses to accept a bit, and the idea is they play with these keys to encourage a wet, relaxed mouth. The problem with that, of course, is it actually teaches the horse, sorry, it's very windy here, it actually teaches the horse to suck its tongue back, which all horses in a bit are going to do. Tongue retraction is the biggest issue when it comes to a horse's acceptance of the bridle. We even have the sliding gag affair, where we can exert some pole pressure and it is said to raise the bit in the horse's mouth, but you'll see that the fundamentals of the bit remains the same no matter what tinkering we do with the joint or even with the cheek piece. So I just want to look at this now in terms of the French link. Now this is a common problem that a lot of people do not understand. Understandably, why would they? They were brought up with the same beliefs that I was. Now, the nutcracker action, they want to cut it down, so they put the link in the middle, okay? So you can see how that's no longer a V, but it's broken to a U, okay? So that makes sense. However, when we put it in the horse's mouth, do excuse me, I want to just bring you down here a little bit more. So, you can see where our link is going to sit, okay? Now it doesn't matter how subtle we are with the reins. As soon as we activate one rein, this is what happens. The joint now moves in the horse's mouth. And the problem we have with that is that the bit is no longer working like that or like that as it is designed to do. It is now working like that, because your joint has moved, and the inevitable result of that is the horse sliding its tongue, usually over to the other side, usually retracting. Now then what happens is the jaw will cross, and you'll start losing your bends, you will start losing flexion and acceptance of the bridle, understandably. So when we look at these things in the horse's mouth, don't know if I can get this one in actually. This is our single joint here. Excuse me. So we have our single joint. And this is to help with our steering, okay? But again, you can see here that as soon as that is moved, our joint moves. Doesn't matter how subtle you are with the reins. That's always always going to be our problem. So what do? Because we want a joint in there to break the nutcracker action, but we're always going to have this effect that the joint is going to move. Now, what we tend to do as humans, sadly, is we'll then shut the mouth with a noseband, something like that. Or we'll assume that the horse needs a stronger bit, when actually it's that joint that's causing the problem. Now, usual fitting of most bits, not all, but most bits, you are encouraged to have an index finger at the side there as a form of measurement. The problem is that gives us quite a bit of leeway for that joint to move within the horse's mouth. And suddenly, our bit is no longer like this. It is now like this. Can you see how that would affect when the horse is meant to be going straight? So you're going to activate, say, our left rein here. Sorry, very windy. So we're going to activate our left rein here. And you can see how that mobility in the mouthpiece, while it's a good thing in one respect, is actually going to be very mobile in the horse's mouth. And that is going to lead us to problems. So, the snaffle, while it is heralded as what every horse should go in, I always question why we will stick with that tradition when we know that the mouthpiece is not stable. If your horse is going cheek first round bends, for instance, falling out at the shoulder, resistant to the inside leg, all of those can be an absolute result of the horse moving its tongue because that joint has now changed. The bit is no longer like that, the bit is now like that. And the only way it can free that trapped is to push the tongue over, suck it back, push it over. And indeed, the jaw has to move in order to allow that. So if I can just show you that the horse will then end up in a situation like that. Okay? So you can see here, well, you would if there was flesh, but you can see here that where the TMJ is now going to start being affected because of that twist in the horse's skull here where it's trying to protect its tongue. So that's something that we need to think of when we're talking about bits, but particularly snaffles and those with joints in them. I think a lot of horses would be an awful lot more comfortable with something like one of the little lozenge joints that you can get now that are very small. I don't endorse any particular make or brand of bit, purely the shape and what they are going to do in the horse's mouth and what your horse is liable to do as a result of it. So I talk about the shape. You can go and find brands to your own liking. But something with a little peanut lozenge would probably be a lot better. However, I believe, personally, if you are able to do away with the joint in the horse's mouth entirely, you are probably going to have a much more comfortable horse. Anyway, that's just a little bit with the snaffles for you. Hope you enjoyed it.